Good morning. Today we look at Ezekiel 3 and 4. In Ezekiel 3, well, as we ended yesterday, God had given Ezekiel a scroll. I looked, and a hand stretched out to me, and a written scroll was in it. He spread it out before me, and the writing on the front and the back were the words of lamentation and mourning and woe. And as chapter 3 begins, he is told to eat that scroll. We don't eat paper. I mean, it doesn't seem right at all. But he said, mortal, eat what is offered to you. Eat this scroll, and then go speak to the house of Israel. And he opened his mouth, he gave me the scroll. He said, mortal, eat the scroll, fill your stomach. And as I ate it, in my mouth, it was sweet as honey. This scroll with these words of woe and lamentation that God was pouring out over the people of Israel tasted sweet as honey. And so in chapter 3, Ezekiel is given 5 commissions, 5 times that God says, go to the house of Israel. And the first one was here in verse 1. Eat this, and then go to the house, speak to the house of Israel. And then in verse 4, again, it's mortal. Go to the house of Israel. So this is the second time God instructs Ezekiel to go to the people of Israel. For you are not sent to a people of obscure speech or difficult language, but to the house of Israel. Whose words, you know these people. They know your language. You know their language. They're not going to be able to say, I can't understand what you're talking about, because you will be speaking to them in their native tongue. But verse 7, the house of Israel will not listen to you, for they're not willing to listen to me. And it's kind of one of those deals, if we don't listen to one person tell us something, and somebody else tells us the same thing, we're most likely not going to listen either. And this is what God is saying, that, these people, he called them stubborn, obstinate, rebellious people, and those words come up many times as well, and he's talking about his chosen people. They're stubborn, obstinate, rebellious. And he says, verse 9, like the hardest stone, harder than flint, I have made your forehead. So, you're not going to be afraid of their words. You're not going to be back down from them. This is within you, and you know this, and you know that it is right, what you're going to speak to the people. And he says, but do not be dismayed at their looks, for they are a rebellious house. And there it was again, God knows who these people are. And then verse 10, again, it's mortal, all my words that I speak, you will receive your ears, then go to the exile. So this is the third time God says, go to the Israelites, go to the exiles, go to them, go to your people and speak to them and say, thus says the Lord, whether they hear or refuse to hear. And of course, God is pretty sure, he knows what's going to happen. They're a rebellious house. Verse 12, the Spirit lifted me up, and as the glory of the Lord rose, he heard this sound, and the Spirit lifted me up, and I went away in bitterness, in the heat of my spirit. And he came to the exile. So the Spirit of God carried Ezekiel to these people near this river Chebar, and that was a river kind of flows southeast from the northern part of Babylon down into the Euphrates. So this river again is mentioned in the Bible as it has been mentioned in Babylonian histories and as others as well. And then the end of verse 15, I sat there among them, stunned for 7 days. And so it was, God had spoken to him, called him, told him 3 times to go to these people, and all of a sudden, he's teleported, from wherever to this place, by this river where these exiles are. And he sat there, it says, 7 days. And then here's the 4th commission, the 4th time God says, go to the people. At the end of 7 days, the word came, mortal. And here, again, that word mortal. And it's, I don't remember, I read if it's 70 times or a lot of times that word mortal, that, God refers to Ezekiel as mortal or son of man, depending on your version of the Bible. I have made you a sentinel for the house of Israel. Whenever you hear a word, you shall give them warning from me. You know, a sentinel is somebody who kind of watches out, brings the message, you know, and speaks to the people that way. He says, if I say to the wicked, you will die, and you give them no warning, or speak to warn them and they die, then their blood is upon you. But if you warn them and they don't turn away and they die, you've saved yourself because you did what you were told. You pointed out their sins. You pointed out the error of their ways. This is what I told you to do, you did it, then their sins are upon them. But if you don't tell them my word, if you don't call them to repentance, if you don't remind them of what I would have them do, then their blood is upon you. And I think about that for us, you know, that, I mean, we are to share God's love. We are to be servants, like Jesus said, you know, be a servant of all. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so if we don't speak out against the wrong, I mean, we're condoning the wrong. You know, if we don't speak out against it, you know, we're silently saying it's okay. And so, you know, we have to speak out against injustice and against wrongdoings and things that are wrong. This is a part of our call, is to, you know, it's just like, you know, if you didn't go vote in the election that just was held, then you have no right to complain about it because you didn't do your part in that. And it doesn't, you know, one vote doesn't make a lot of difference, but one vote can. And it's just like maybe one voice can't make a lot of difference, but somebody is going to hear that voice, and it may make a difference to that one person. And so, you know, this is, you know, speak, correct what is wrong, point out the errors, encourage the good, you know, and this is what you should do. And it says, if a righteous turn from their righteousness and commit iniquity, and I lay a stumbling block for them, and they die, because you have not warned them, you know, but their blood I will require at your hand. However, if you have warned the righteous not to sin, and, you know, so it's whether they're good or whether they're bad. You know, you know, if they start wandering off in their ways, you'll point that out. If they're already evil, tell them they need to change, you know, but, you know, it's speak. And this is the fourth commission, fourth time that God has told Ezekiel to go. And then the fifth time comes in verse 22. The hand of the Lord was upon me. He said to me, rise, go up out in the valley, and there I will speak with you. So it's 5 times in this chapter, God has instructed Ezekiel to go to the Israelites, to speak, and now to go out into the wilderness or the valley so that I may speak to you again. And he's again by this river Chebar, and he falls on his face, and the Spirit enters into him, and go shut yourself up in your house. And he says, as for you, mortal, again, mortal, you'll love that. Cords will be placed on you. You will be bound, so you cannot go out. And then chapter 4, you know, you will lay on your left side for 390 days. You know, I mean, I can't imagine, you know, I mean, I roll around, toss around all night long, but, you know, so he's there, and, you know, it tells how the food will be provided, but 390 days he's on his left side, and it says according to the years of their punishment. Well, the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years, and the 40 days on his other side, you know, the second time on his right side, those 40 days, you know, could very easily correspond to the 40 years in the wilderness, but the 390 years doesn't really add up, because in Exodus it says it was 430 years that they were. So that number is questionable, and, you know, not that it makes it probably a whole lot of difference, but anyway, but Ezekiel was to lie there for that many days because of the significance of the Israelites' captivity, and the 40 days because of their wandering in the wilderness. And then he's instructed to draw out the siege of Jerusalem. Jerusalem hasn't fallen yet when Ezekiel begins his ministry. It's about halfway through his ministry, as I mentioned yesterday, that Jerusalem falls. So, you shall set your face toward the siege of Jerusalem, and with your arm bared you shall prophesy against it. I'm putting cords, I'm putting cords on you. You've got to do this. You are bound to me. You are bound to the truth, and this is what it will be. And in this time when he's laying on his side, God first says, well, your food will be prepared over human dung, and he doesn't like that idea. So then God says, well, okay, it'll be cooked over cow dung, which, and think about the early days here in the United States as they settled the West, and here, they didn't have a lot of trees and everything, so they used cow dung, buffalo chips, and that was a good source of their heat. And so it's a biblical term. You use that for heat, for cooking, for heating your house and all that. But, Ezekiel has quite a call from God, and, with this beginning. And then the last thing that happens in chapter 4 is that the prophecy of lack of food. And this is because of the siege of Jerusalem that will come about.